better get cracking. I'll declare myself a baby boomer and just reassure everybody that age has nothing to do with anything. It's all about attitude. So never be put off by anybody saying that when you get older you're not so good. There's three parts to my presentation. There's the first little medical bit, because that's very important. That's what we're all doing, or have done. There's the entrepreneurial bit, which is, I suspect, quite different from other presentations tonight. And then there's the how and the why bit, which has got some unsolicited advice, which you can take it or leave it as you wish, but I guess it's a bit more of a reflection on how and why I've done things. I've had the great good fortune to spend most of my working life doing something I really love, something that's provided limitless challenges and has kept me very busy. When I got into it, it was called long-term care. Now it's got all sorts of fancy names because the government keeps categorising things. But it includes geriatrics and it includes rehabilitation, but I've never seen it as being only about older people, because in the mix in what is called aged care, there are people in what I might call minority groups who find themselves relegated to aged care, but they've got other diagnoses, different age groups, different and particular needs, like Huntington's disease, like acquired brain injury, and they fall between the cracks, and they sort of end up in the big basket of so-called aged care. And they've provided me with great opportunity to find better ways. But geriatrics itself involves so much more than medicine. It's full of challenges and it begs for innovation, for redesign and smart thinking. And if you've got an entrepreneurial attitude and a lot of patience, you can actually shift things and change them. And that's kept me busy for at least 30 years. So as you've heard, I graduated from the University of Adelaide when retro was real, when there were 14 girls and 110 students because there was a quota. And everything was terribly traditional and change was very slow. I came to WA in 1984 via Adelaide, Melbourne, Penang, Butterworth, Melbourne, Geelong, and got here in 1984 when it was the time of the America's Cup. And I was absolutely stunned by this incredible boom town, absolutely reeking and full of entrepreneurism. I came with my husband and a little boy who's now well and truly grown up and a medical person himself. Having had a very varied medical journey through acute hospitals with the RAF, general practice, family planning clinics, you name it, I've sort of had a go. But it's all grist to the mill with regard to learning a lot about doctoring and about difficult decision making and learning to live with the consequences of those decisions. So it lays down a pretty interesting platform for whatever else you do. And can I suggest, if you have the choice, and I think you've heard it once or twice, go do stuff, because it's easy to get down a run of specialising something which is, you know, very worthy, but it does you a lot of good to actually face the world and have to come to grips with it yourself. I'd completed a diploma of geriatric medicine, and I was inspired by the combination in geriatrics of the medical complexity. It's very complicated, geriatric medicine, and everybody writes it off, but it's very complicated because everybody's got lots of pathologies and lots of problems, and you toss in a bit of dementia and it's a real challenge. The need to work very closely with skilled health professionals is, you can't do geriatrics successfully unless you're working in a team, and you're not just looking to sort out people's medical problems, you're actually trying to restore function and maintain independence for them. So there's a vast variety of challenge in geriatrics, which most people I think don't realise. It's much more than clinical medicine. It's about ensuring appropriate and accessible services. It's about having to understand government rules and funding, which keeps changing every year. It's about service providers in all their diversity, and about extraordinarily different, and perhaps I could say disparate, Commonwealth and state systems, and there's this old person caught in the middle. So I thought there were a few mountains to move and there were a lot of institutions to deinstitutionalise. After a short period of getting to know WA, I landed at a remarkable place, the Homes of Peace, which is now known as Brightwater, and I spent a bit of intrapreneurial time getting a proud and soundly competent nursing institution into the 20th century. It was hard work. Then a couple of things kept me pretty busy for the next 10 to 15 years. See, that's how you get older. One was actually deinstitutionalising the institution, and I can't explain it quickly, so I'll leave it be, but it was a paradigm shift from being a very old-style institution, and we did the unthinkable. There was only us and one other in South Australia doing what the rest of Australia said we couldn't, which was building little groups of little houses in suburban streets, which were nursing homes. Everybody told me, you can't do that, it'll never work. You won't have enough staff, people won't know what to do, etc. Well, it's rubbish. And actually now, that is the expectation of older people. The second thing, which is probably the thing I feel most passionately about, as I was walking around the Homes of Peace in the early days, I found a lot of young people who'd been relegated to Homes of Peace because of their very severe brain injury and no hope of recovery. That's what we learned as medical students after a couple of years of plateaus, and that's it. And then, of course, the hospitals that sent us these young people with very bad brain injury never saw them again. So they never learned that actually people do improve. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, I talked the health department into letting me set up an establishment out in the community in East Victoria Park. It's called Oak Street. It's in the community, it is home-like, and I gathered together a handful of brave allied health and some daring, pretty daring care staff, and we all plunged into this fairly risky venture and set out to see what we could do. The program's evolved. This started 25 years ago. Everybody told me, including Shenton Park, that I couldn't possibly do it. It's just a load of nonsense and it'll never work. Well, from day one, we were able to start people with very bad brain injury going home. Took a bit of time, and I don't have time to explain how we did it, and they're living their own lives the way they want to, where they want to. It's now internationally recognised, and we have a lot of research going on and a lot of teaching, and for those who are interested in the money side of things, I had a cost-benefit analysis done so I could prevail upon politicians to try and get a bit of recognition. And it is estimated to be delivering, in a very conservative way of looking at it, at least 4-to-1 return on investment. It's probably more like 8-to-1. Numbers are coming out of the UK at the moment which are backing that up as well. So, but it's still one of a kind. It's the only one in the world quite like it. And you know, hearing what amazing things go on happening in Western Australia, I feel a little better, because it's very hard when there's an incredible innovation in one place. The rest of the world thinks it's fantastic, but do you think I can get anybody in WA to wave the flag for it? It's taking a while. But we were working on brain plasticity and the ability for the brain to rewire itself long before anyone conceded the potential for severely affected brains to recover, and long before any of us had heard of brain plasticity. So it's amazing what you can do when you reckon it can be done. The other things that have happened to me, probably because I haven't stepped out of my not-for-profit aged care and disability and brain injury sector. So I'm not strictly speaking an entrepreneur, but I've agitated and fiddled and provoked and challenged and tried to change things, even if it's taken me a very long time. And so I've invested a lot in education, so I got involved in the State Training Board at the University of Western Australia, which is an enormous privilege. and 1,000 things. The Telstra businesswoman thing, I didn't pursue that, that just happened. But what it did do was catapult me into the world of business in ways that you describe as well. And you have to have cred. So in a way, this gave me cred, because until you've got cred, people do not believe you. And sometimes when you've got the cred, you can move a few mountains. And I'm going to take one more minute, if that's all right, Dan. When I needed $20 million, and I didn't have a clue where to start, I didn't learn that at Medscope, to rebuild Oak Street, it was because I'd moved around in the business world to some extent, and was able to call on people that I knew to help, and we did actually raise about $14 million, which is all I needed, because we could find the rest. The how and the why bit, my reflection, you have to see an unmet need, and I think you've said it, you've got to see the problem and understand that it actually is a problem. And for me, it was acquired brain injury, an example I've given. You must always be dissatisfied with the status quo, because we do live in a fairly narrow world, as has been suggested already. Don't ever put up with the fact that something is seen as the norm. Just question it every time, because what was normal yesterday ain't the norm today, and if it is, it shouldn't be. Watch out for sacred cows. They're invisible, they're disguised, they're devious, they seem implacable, they're quoted with great authority. You can't do that, it'll never work, we've never done that this way before. And really, sacred cows need to be made hamburgers of, if you can get the mincing machine out. But do it carefully, because you've got to find something else to put in its place. But they're very devious things, sacred cows, and we tend to accept them because they're part of the norm. Always see an issue in the context of the bigger picture. Who and what else do you have to tackle to achieve what you're going to do? Be willing to learn stuff that we didn't learn in medical school, like finance and business systems and PR and marketing and management skills and leadership. Never ever stop learning. From what and how you've done things, reflect every time when you've made a decision that felt a bit difficult, or even if it didn't, just reflect, did you do the right thing? Could you learn something from it? And learn from people you admire. Leadership is important. I'll just give you my favourite definition, and there's a heap behind this, but it sounds very simple. It's getting other people to do what you want because they want to. You've got to persuade them they want to do it. You got it? This is really difficult. So my conclusion is that this is all about people, and it certainly has been for me, and I think it's why most of us started out in medicine. So whether we do it directly, one-on-one with a patient, or indirectly, either running a service or an organisation, improving what you do for better results for people, by discovering new knowledge, new techniques, by invention or innovation, by commercialising a significant benefit. You're hearing it all tonight. This is fantastic, isn't it? It's a never-ending journey, and it takes a generous and curious approach, as well as the tried and true that we all learn at university in our mostly hospital training. There's a world outside hospitals, folks. My very last word is, it's important, no matter what you're doing and how hard it is, to be polite and be positive. It's a huge psychological advantage, especially when the going is tough. And it delivers what you're after much quicker, because you don't have to have fights. Respect is a very powerful weapon. Thank you.